Any questions from week one? Okay. All righty. So, good evening and welcome to Module 2. Um, so, this is the second week. And what we're going to do is I wanted to talk about APA format. So, specifically for the discussion. Um, so, when you look at the class, there are APA resources throughout the course. So, if you go to Home, and you go to student resources here, click here. And then these are your support services, so like if I want to do somebody to review my paper, I can go to tutor.com. And if I click on tutor.com, it tells you um, what the tutoring service offer you. And this is a free service that you can use. But this explains everything about tutor.com. And you should come here to submit a paper if you want someone to review your writing. If there's, just any kind of questions associated with the course, you can come here and see if tutor.com provides that help for you. All right. So that's tutor.com. Other student resources you have are like, let me see, let's go back to academic support. If you go to APA style, okay, here's APA style. So these are all the different guides and resources you have around APA style. It seems like some people don't know what an in-text citation is, but if you come here, they will give you in-text citations. So you can go back, read what an in-text citation is, and they'll show you some guidelines. And so the whole thing about citations, and specifically in-text citations, which are in the body of the work that you're going to submit. So if you're submitting a paragraph on a discussion board, you should have at the bottom something that says references, and you have a APA formatted reference. But for every reference you have at the end of your paper, you should have one in-text citation that goes with that reference. Okay, so you can't have 10 references and no in-text citations in the body of the paper to go with those references. So you just need to make sure that for every reference you have an in-text citation. Okay, so here's some examples of appropriate level of citations. So notice that what an in-text citation does, it provide the appropriate credit to the source. Okay, uh, by using an in-text citation. Okay, whenever you do any of the following. So if you paraphrase some information from a different source, you need to make sure you have a reference to that source in a in-text citation everywhere that you're using that reference. So you can't put like, on the bottom of the paper, you got about 10 bullet points and you put one in-text citation, because the reader of that article or that submission doesn't know what you're citing. Where was that source used? So you put a citation next to the place that you use that source. And there's different types of in-text citations for different types of sources that you're citing. So if you're paraphrasing, you can use one type of citation. Are if you are paraphrasing, you use one type of citation. If you are a direct quote, you use a different type of citation. But here's a checklist for you on citations. Okay. So if I go back to, let's go here. Uh, so they talk about the basic principle, the author date citation system. Okay. So here's an example of a citation, an in-text citation. Notice this is the reference list entry. I was trying to see if there's a paper, but if you have one author, this is how you should cite. Okay. So This is a good resource for you for in-text citations. Okay, it gives you like information on how to cite and different ways to cite depending on what information you're using. But every post that you do in your discussion post, you should have a in-text citation in the body of the paper of your post, and you should have a reference that goes along with that in-text citation. Does anyone have any questions about that? Any questions? All right, let me go back. All right, let me go here. All right, so notice here they give you a sample paper. So here's a sample paper, and they go through and talk about what the title page should look like. Okay, the author name. This is how your paper should be set up, and then the title page. Notice that it should be double spaced. Okay, and then you place your title uh, 3 or 4 lines down from the top of the paper. So, it goes through here and gives you some information on how your paper should look like, what your paper should look like, I'm sorry, and how you should set it up. So notice this paper is double spaced. This is what your paper should look like. Notice the introduction and the indentation. When you go to your second page, notice the indentation. Okay. And so now you have the paper. You notice that if this is the paper title, notice that it's going to be centered. This is what the paper title should look like, you know. But it's showing you all of the different things that you should be set up. Here's an in-text citation here. Notice that when I go to the if I go to the reference page of this, I'm going to see this name. And on my reference page, it should be in alphabetical order. Okay. Now you should also it talks about tables and figures. So if it's a table, notice that the table number should be at the top. Then right up under the table number, it should give the title of that article. Okay, and so notice this is a table, and so it's formatted in APA. This is a figure. Notice what a figure number is, and then it has the figure title. Okay. And depending on what version of APA, this can kind of differ. So, but we're using, I think it's the 8th edition of APA. And so it talks about the table alignment, the figure alignment. So any questions on APA, the in-text citation, what goes on the reference page, and so on? Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So notice this is the reference list. This is the reference list. Notice you're going to bold the word references, okay, and label at the top of the first page of your references here. And then notice that the first line is over to the left, and then anything that goes with that first line is indented. All right, and then you can get your next reference. Notice that these are in alphabetical order. All right. All right. So you have that checklist that you can use. Now, remember, this is a research based course. So that's why we're using APA format because this is a research based course. So you are doing research, you're using information from the uh, the modules. So the different modules have articles. So if you're using those articles, you need to make sure you're giving credit to the author. And everything for the most part that we're going to be doing is going to require you to do citations because everything is going to be based off of other work that people have done and you're learning. So you need to cite. All right. Does anyone have any questions about citations? The other thing is, I wanted to point out if there's no questions about citation, the other thing I want to reinforce is the late policy. So, uh, so the late policy is going to be also in the course. So when I look at online policies, this is late work policy here. And so notice if you turn a discussion in, it will not be accepted late. So if you don't hit the deadline for the discussion, that's the initial post. That's due Thursday at 11:59 Eastern Time. Okay, so notice everything is due Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, every student should know that that has taken at least one class from online at Indiana Tech. So everything is in Eastern Time, and all due dates are Eastern Time. So notice in this late policy, you see that several different times. Um, I think if you go into the settings and set your time zone up, set your time zones up so that it's in your time zone, then everything is going to adjust. Okay, so notice here, this is Indiana Eastern Time right here. So if I'm in Central Time. If I want everything to be Central Time in the course, I think if you go and make this change, put Central Time or whatever your time zone is, I think it's going to go back and modify everything and update everything to the Central Time zone due dates. And so let's just see that. So like if I go to, let me repeat this. So if I look at my assignments, and let's just look at module one, for example. Now, where's the due date? Notice that the due date for module one is July the 26th at 11:59 p.m. Okay, so that's the due date in Central Time. I mean Eastern Time. So if I change this to Central Time, notice now that my course is Central Time. If I go back over here, let me just refresh it, see if it updates. So now it's saying July the 26th at 11:59, and I'm thinking this should be 10:59. Well, it doesn't look like it updated. Let me make sure. Doesn't look like it updated, but if you lose that clock, it should update, and the time should be in Central Time for me. So notice here it's 11 p.m. Notice here it's 10:59 p.m. Okay, but notice the local time, meaning that the time that Canvas has is 11:59. Since I changed mine to Central Time, notice that the course is going to be at 10:59. So even though the assignments are due, and when they say in local time, they're talking about Canvas. Remember what I said? Canvas is Eastern Time. So notice the local time from Canvas perspective is going to be 11:59 p.m. And the course, my course shell, since I've changed that date, notice that it's an hour earlier for Central Time. Mm. Yeah, so it's an hour early. So it did change the time. Okay. So notice it tells you that the account default time is 11:59 p.m. You know. So, but I'm in Central Time. I know everything is due at 11. If I'm in Mountain Time, Then I got to go back 3 hours. So make sure you're following everything in terms of the course, in terms of due dates. And one student had an issue with that, and I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that. So if you're mountain time, then you have to make the appropriate adjustments. But if you change that, I think it should resolve that issue, because I don't have any other students having issues with the time and the environment. So, all right, let me. I want to do one other thing. Oh, I think I was talking about the late policy. Let me go back to that. Sorry. So if I go back to home and I go back to our policies and I go to the late policy, late work policy, notice it's telling you that the weekly discussion has to be submitted by Thursday at 11:59 Eastern Time. If you do not hit that deadline, and like I said, and I just want to be strict about this, because whenever I offer flexibility in terms of due dates, it always creates additional problems. So the easiest way to handle it is just making sure that if you don't submit it by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, the system is going to tell me that it's late. And if the system says it's late, what it is 1 minute, 1 second, then it's going to be late, because every student has a whole week to submit that assignment and be on time. So you have a week to do that. And if you wait to the last minute, and for whatever the reason is, you wait to the last minute, and the system mark you as late, then I'm going to apply this policy to your grade. And that's just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Now, when it comes to any kind of discussion, if your discussion replies are not, submitted by Sunday night at 11:59, they will also not be accepted, because, and that's for the discussion. Now, if you don't submit the discussion replies on time, that doesn't give people time to reply. Because if you submit it late, nobody else is submitting to that assignment, because the assignment is closed. So just make sure with the discussions, you hit the due dates. And the due dates, once again, for your original post is Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And then for your replies, they are due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay. And so notice, due to the highly interactive nature of discussions, late posts will receive 0 credit. Okay. So everybody understand that. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay. For all other assignments in the course, work submitted past the due date will be subject to a grade deduction of 10% of the assignment's earned points, um, you know, per calendar day. So if you are 5 days late, that means that 50% of the assignment grade is going to be deducted from your earned grade. Okay. So just make sure that you are submitting everything on time. And the easiest way to do that, you have a whole week. That's why I do this on Monday. So you have a whole week to go through and work through the assignments, because on Monday I've explained the assignments to you. I've answered any questions that you may have if you are on the live, and you have a whole week. So if you wait to the last minute for whatever the reason is, then you're gonna start having to get points deducted. So just make sure you do everything as early as possible, so that way you don't have to worry about that. Okay. All right, so that's the late policy. One of the things I wanted to also do was I wanted to go over one of your assignments. I think this is assignment 2 from week 1. Okay, so what this is your assignment 2, and I'm going to give this to everybody, and this is going to be your guide specifically for PowerPoint. So when you talk about the statistical data categories and analytical levels, this is what an APA formatted PowerPoint should look like. And it also applies to documents and all of that. All right. So notice here this descriptive and inferential statistics. Notice I go through explain what that is. I have some summary here. Notice I got the figure number in the title. Any notes? I got them at the bottom. Okay. Now this is for relevant figures. All right. And so notice I talk about descriptive statistics, what they are, and I give a source. That's an in-text citation. Notice I did it for descriptive statistics. Notice inferential statistics, I do the same thing. Okay. So there's no doubt what I'm talking about because it's next to the actual information. This paraphrased. Go to the next slide. Notice I have a title on the slide. And then I talk about what a parametric framework is. Okay. And then I talk about what the non-parametric framework is. And notice that each one has its own citation. There is no, me guessing about what am I referencing. So it's right next to it. Then you get into the analytical framework. Okay. You get into the analytical framework. And then I talk about analytical maturity levels. And so I go through this. Now, this is a image. Really, this is kind of like it's all kind of linked together. So all of it came from the same source because it's an image. And so this is kind of like how I'm kind of citing it. Okay. And then you get into your historical trends and root causes. And notice the citation is here. Okay. The citation is here. Notice that this is just a graphic. It's not in terms of adding any value from a standpoint, but I do cite it, that image. And then forward-looking strategies, I have an image here. And then notice that each one of these bullets has a citation. Okay. So any questions so far? All right. Notice this is a table. Notice I have the table number and the alignment and any kind of notes that are needed. All right. And then I come to the reference page. So notice this is the reference page. Notice my references in alphabetical order. Okay. Notice that I have them indented. All right. So that's what a APA PowerPoint presentation should look like. And when I say that, I mean from the formatting standpoint. So you see that it's nice, clear. There's no questions about where I got information from because the citation is right next to the information. So this is, I'm going to attach it to I think it's assignment number 2. I will attach this PowerPoint presentation so everybody will have it and will be able to refer to it throughout the course. Okay. So any questions on that? All right. So let's go back now. I think that's all I wanted to kind of touch on from that standpoint. And let's go back to Module 2 now. All right. So the Module 2 overview. All righty. So here's the lesson overview. Hold on a second. So here's the lesson overview. So for Module 2, we're going to be able to, by the end of this lesson or module, describe the limitations of statistics in analytics, and then explain supervised and unsupervised learning methods for statistical analysis. Why is it important? Notice they tell you that statistical analysis and analytics are wonderful tools that help us understand data. While data comes in different types, careful analysis and understanding of the data are important. When deciding what data to analyze and which types of statistics to use, it is essential to consider the limitations. Statistics are used for a wide range of purposes. People believe statistics in visualization are used to communicate the results. Yet, there is a fine line between truthful statistics and how the results are shown. And so, they give you some information about Albert Einstein, what he says that notice that this is disputed. Albert Einstein once said about statistics, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. In other words, statistics can only take you so far. Knowing the limits is important. All right. And so then we get into the limitations of statistics. So one of the things you have to be careful about is misleading statistics. Okay. So misleading statistics only use data that supports someone's view of the data. Changing the scale on the X or Y axis, missing data, and even math mistakes. Each of the resources below show a variety of misleading graphs. And so this is going to show you some different ways that statistics can be misleading. So if I click here on this image, notice that it comes up and it goes through and talks about those different ways that information is used that can be misleading. Okay. So make sure you review that. And then here's five sources of misleading statistics and how they can jeopardize your company. So if you click on that article, it comes up and they go into misleading statistics. All right. Here's a video where they go through different ways that statistics can be misleading, and then they give you some learning ways graphs represent the actual data in a misleading or wrong way is important. So they go through and give you some examples. So notice you have three tabs. So this is the overall appearance, this is the math, and this is the audience. Okay. Then they talk about the seven limitations of business analytics, understanding the boundaries for informed decisions. That article, just make sure it opens. Okay, so it seems like it's open with no problem. And then I need to contact them to find out what's wrong with the video. It's saying that it's no longer available. But you may be able to search on this title. What are the limitations of statistics? So if I take that, copy it, and just do search, and this may be it. You know, nah, that's not it. But you can kind of try to, if that's something you're interested in as a source, you can try to see if you can find it by searching on the title. Okay, let me see. Maybe this will get us. Nope, the video is unavailable. All right, and so here's some other misleading statistics can be dangerous, and here's some examples. Let's just check it and make sure. Yep, seems like it's okay. And then they talk about some key challenges and limitations of statistics and descriptions. And so you can kind of scroll through this, flip it, and they give you more information. Okay. And then they get into supervised machine learning. So notice machine learning is what prepares large language models, LLMs, to do self learning. So creating algorithms and systems architecture is the foundation for feeding AI. So there are two types of machine language. I mean, learning. There's a supervised, and then there's unsupervised. And so then they go into what is supervised. Okay, and they give you this image, and then they talk about, you can use Python. Python is a coding language. Before they revamped this course, there was a module or assignments that we worked through for the whole 6 weeks using Python. And basically, what they would do is give you an example, show you how to write the code, and then you will go through on this data set and write the code. Okay. And it was pretty much around graphs. So the whole Python lesson was around visualization of your data. So you did different types of graphs in Python. Excuse me. And so here's some language, here's some Python that they kind of show you how you would do it, write the code. Okay. Notice that Python or code above simply shows that new data and new labels are added to update the model to learn about new categories or better. Okay. And so they talk about supervised machine learning, and they talk about you have two branches, you have regression and you have classification. All right. That's the supervised. And then classification in machine language. Here's an introduction. Just make sure that that works. It does. And so you can get additional information through this article. All right. Here's a summary of the types of regression and what the results are going to show you. And if you wanted to see or understand a specific type of regression, you can go to YouTube, and YouTube will give you some examples to help you process and understand the different types of regression. We mostly use simple linear regression and multiple linear regression. Maybe some, logistics. Notice that logistics is a type of regression that assists in the classification of data with with supervised learning. The result or output are binary, 0 or 1. An example is applying to a university and getting accepted or not. That would be the type of, something like logistic, because you got two outcomes, binary outcome. Okay. And so here's some images for you to look at in terms of regression and predictive models. So predictive model is that you can kind of guess what's going to happen in the future or get some kind of feedback what may happen. And then you have the unsupervised machine learning, and they go through and explain that. Then they give you an article that explains supervised versus unsupervised learning. What's the cause? Just click on it. So it works. And so you can go through and read that and get a better understanding. And then notice supervised falls into cluster analysis or dimensionality reduce. And so they talk about different techniques up on the clustering. And then they talk about the two techniques that are on under dimensionality, which is principal component analysis and independent component analysis, and then factor analysis. All right. And so they give you an article on dimensionality. So, it works. And then they give you one on clustering and explain what clustering is. And then a clustering algorithm. Okay, so all of that works. So you got plenty of resources. And then navigating the landscape of unsupervised learning. And now, one of the things that notice this article, say that you wanted additional information. If this is a peer reviewed, so notice they're showing you different techniques that you won't be using. Okay. What I was trying to see is with a lot of academic articles, if you go to the reference section, there are additional resources in the reference section. So you may see some additional resources that you're interested in. And then this is the summary. So, in summary, the strength of your statistical analysis is built by understanding the statistical results of an analysis and how best to use those statistics to communicate with your audience. Your utilization of machine learning, supervised or unsupervised, gives you the ability to apply AI to your analytical process. AI learning algorithms need to be understood regarding what they can and cannot do for your statistical analysis. Okay. And I just want to reiterate, guys, like I said, everything that you're doing is basically research. So this is what I mean by the reference page. So if you look at this reference page, here's different articles that you can use also to support your paper. So all of these are articles that you can bring up and use. And once you click on the article, there's going to be other resources in its reference section that you can use. So you got a lot of information that you can have access to. All right, just wanted to ask, are there any questions so far? Nope. All right, so that's module two. And so then we're going to get into the module two assignments. So, okay, so module two discussion is called limitations of statistics and analytics. So the discussion will be completed in two parts, allowing you the opportunity to reflect on this week's content and interact with your classmates. So part one, your initial post is going to be due Thursday by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And then part two, you'll post a substantive feedback to two of your classmates by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. And so the discussion question is this week, we have been learning about limitations associated with statistics and analytics. So, in your own words, describe three limitations of analytics and statistics. Provide a real world example of a statistic that is misleading or incorrect. Respond to at least two other students' posts by offering additional insight or asking further questions about their contribution. So, notice that Bryce has posted. So, he has two references, and we should be able to see where he's referring to these references in the body of the paper. All right. So notice he's using navigating the limitation of statistics. This right here is basically this. And notice he psychology, I'm sorry, town. Now I don't know what that refers to. I don't know what that refers to. Oh, it's a part of that first one. It's a real long citation. Okay. Yeah, you probably want to shorten that up, Bryce. You know, but the other thing is, I don't see where he's using this citation, and I may be overlooking it. I don't see where he's using that citation. Nope, I don't see it. But if you have this in the reference, there should be somewhere in the body of the paper that you've used it. And I'm not seeing it. Maybe I'm overlooking it. But, so notice Michael, he has his citation here. This is this one. And then where is that one? Here. So good job, Michael. And good job, Bryce. Bryce just checked this citation. Okay. But those are two good examples where they've responded, and they have citations to go with that response. Okay, so that's the expectation to get full points on the discussion. All right, and then your module two assignment is supervised and unsupervised learning. And so notice the overview for this assignment. You will prepare a deliverable of your choice. In other words, you can do a Word document, you can do a slide presentation. Now, when you do the slide presentation, you want to make sure that you keep it concise. Don't do a slide presentation with 30 slides or 20 slides. Keep it 10 or below. So, and that's one part, is being able to write briefly and get everything you need to get it into your content. So either you're going to do a written document, a slide presentation, or some kind of brochure. So focus on supervised and unsupervised learning methods for statistical analysis. See the specific instructions below. Your completed deliverable should comply with APA writing requirements. In other words, you should be using APA headers. You should have in-text citations. You should have references. Your paper should be double spaced. Your paragraph should be indented. Okay. And to find guidance on APA formatting, go to the course home and click on the student resources. And make sure you look up APA headers. And I'm going to try to cover that if I have time real quick. All right. And so, introduction, this week's lesson and resources provide insight into different supervised and unsupervised learning methods for statistical analysis. So, what you're going to do is prepare a deliverable of your choice, okay? And it's going to contain resources to assist you with the completing of this assignment. That's talking about this handout. In your deliverable, provide a clear explanation of what each of the following supervised learning methods is, how each work, and when each is commonly used. So regression and classification for supervised. And then for unsupervised, we're talking about clustering and dimensionality reduction. Okay, so include relevant graphs, that's images, diagrams, or other visualizations. And what they mean by relevant, just don't put it in there just to have a graphic. Make sure that it's relevant to what you're talking about. And notice that they also saying that image helps demonstrate the concept and support your explanation. All graphics must be properly cited, in other words, an APA format. Submit your completed deliverable below. And so notice here, this is the rubric for that assignment. So you make sure you click on the rubric, and this is how it's going to be graded. Supervised learning methods provide a clear and thorough explanation of regression and classification, so on. Unsupervised is looking for the same thing for clustering and dimensionality reduction. And then the relevant graphics. Do you have graphics? If you don't have a graphic, you're going to automatically lose 20 points if you don't have a graphic. Okay. And then your spelling and grammar in APA format and writing. Okay. So with your APA formatting and writing, that's also going to be a part of this, making sure that everything is right. So make sure you look at the rubric and you can kind of grade yourself and make sure you're not missing anything. And then the last thing is the week 2 tech live reflection. And so you're either going to be looking at this or you're going to be attending. Oh, no problem, Bryce. Yeah, just go back and edit it. See if it'll let you edit. If it won't let you edit, just do a new post. And just only thing you have to do is just copy what you did previously and just put that second citation in there, and you're good. If it won't let you edit it. All right. And then the tech live. So, like I said, last class, if you've attended the live, you can just let me know. Uh, but if you didn't attend the live, then you do your reflection. And what the reflection means is talk about what we discussed or I discussed specifically in the tech live reflection. And that's just to make sure that you've watched it. So, like, if you just give me a recap of what that module talked about, and not specifically tell me, because one of the things that you should talk about is the things that are not in the lesson. So, for example, if I'm talking about late policy, you need to mention that I talked about the late policy. That reaffirms to me that you talked about the late policy and you understand the late policy. Or if you don't have questions, if you have questions, then just post that in your reflection. But notice it's a reflection. So it's what did I talk about on the Tech Live? And so you write a paragraph and you get your 10 points. But the first thing you should do, and that's why, like I said, I do it on Monday. The first thing you should do before you start working on any assignment is look at the Tech Live, because I've gone over it and I'm pointing out things that's going to help you improve. All right. So the Tech Live, it should be the first thing that you watch um, during the week. All right. So I just want to do one other thing. I got about a couple of minutes. I want to go back to home and I want to go to the student resources again. And I want to do APA. And what I want to do is, let me see, I'm looking for APA headers. I think I can do it here. Let me see. Student papers. Uh, is it here? All right. All right. So notice that this is the title of the paper, and notice that this is the title of the paper. It looks like it's a level 1 header. I want to find those different header types because that will help you. Okay, headings. Okay, here we go. So notice for level 1 header, notice that it's going to be the center and it's going to be bold. Okay, so center, bold, title casing in terms of the header. Notice text begins as a new paragraph here. Now, when you have a title, everything you do should have a level 1 header. You know, if it's a header, it should be level 1. And then you may, up under these level 1, so like an example of a level 1 header could be cake. And then you write a paragraph about cake, whatever cake is. Then you may have a level 2 header that talks about chocolate cake. So it should be a level 2 header. Okay. Then you may have another level 2 that talks about lemon cake. Notice it's all up under the header of cake. Okay. Then, so you just talk about, a chocolate cake, a lemon cake. Then you go back to and start talking about pies. So when you start talking about pies, you change subject. It should be a level 1 header, center, bold, title case. And then you may talk about a lemon pie, pecan pie, you know, and so on. But you can use level 3 headers, but most of the time we won't be talking about level 3 headers. So like in the cake example, I said chocolate cake. Okay. Then you may want to have something up under chocolate cake. You may want to have a German chocolate cake, and it would be a level 3 header up under chocolate cake because it's a type of chocolate cake. Then you can have, chocolate cake with mousse or whatever, and that would be a level 3 because it's up under, it's a sub title of chocolate cake. Okay. Now you got 2 subtypes of chocolate cake. They would have a level 3 header. And look on, if you need some examples, look on, just do a search on APA headers, and they'll show you an example, and they'll show you in a sample paper of what they're talking about. S- oh, Bryce. Okay, that's back to that. All right. So, yeah, are there any questions on anything else? Hopefully, I've explained it well. But if I hadn't, and you still have questions, just reach out to me. Send me an email, and make sure, like I said, make sure when you're sending out an email that you are using the mail here inside of a Canvas. That's going to get you the quickest response because it also sends me a notification to my telephone. And if I'm close to my computer, I answer it. All right. So hopefully, I've explained everything to a point where you can use. And like I said, if you need additional clarification on something, just reach out to me. No big deal. And any questions for the last time? Going once, twice. All righty. I'm logging out.